All right, let's say our La'asok B'divrei Torah blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirshanu mitzvot tzivanu la'asok divrei Torah. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves with the word of Torah. So, trying to get all the way back up to the top here. Okay. So we have here a Simchat Torah flag. My question is, what do you see? And if you need to, that didn't do anything. If you need to make it bigger, you might be able to on your device that you're viewing this on, either with the Command Plus or with pinching and expanding. There may be ways for you to make it bigger. I'm sorry that I can't make it bigger on my device to share. But what do you see?
Open mic? Anybody said?
Open mic, you said?
Yeah, is it an open mic kind of question?
Yeah, open mic.
We can just say, I see a hakafah, people dancing around with Torah.
Okay, great.
On the right, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I see kids in celebration of Torah, but they're engaged in singing and dancing in a Hasidic kind of format.
See that it's many countries represented, cultures, all the flags, different flags.
That's Theater Herzl in the front right corner.
Yeah. I see men and women dancing together. This wouldn't be permitted with the Hasidim, as far as I know, and the ones I know. And there's Herzl there. Is
that Moses and Miriam next to Herzl?
Yes.
That's what I could see it as, yeah.
Because Moses is carrying the Ten Commandments and Miriam is holding a tambourine.
Okay. I wasn't sure that what that character was carrying, but
The lady in a wheelchair also.
Piggybacking off of that, there's also looks like it's a very diverse group of people. You have obviously not the flags everywhere, but the people also just look like they're from all occupations, like everywhere. It looks like there's one woman in like what looks like an army uniform just because it's green. I interpreted it as an army uniform. I wasn't sure. There's other people who look like they're wearing office wear, etc. It's kind of just like looks like everybody, even like kids. There's like everybody from all walks of life. I think kind of sort of encapsulates like the diversity of the Jewish people, especially when you pair it with like the flags. I think it's maybe what it's hinting on. It's like everybody basically joining in this celebration.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the woman in a red dress toward the left carrying the Torah scroll is supposed to be a rabbi.
What makes you think that? Like, what do you see?
She's carrying the Torah scroll. She's got a long talit. She's actually the only one other than the man holding up the Torah scroll with like the white Torah mantle. She's the only one wearing a talit.
Yeah.
And there's a boy carrying a Torah and not wearing a talit.
Well,
Moshe isn't wearing a talit.
Not carrying a Torah.
He's carrying the commandments. He's carrying the Luchot.
Actually, Moses didn't have to wear a talit. He had to have tzitzit on his clothing.
Commentary says that God wore a talit and tefillin when he passed by Moshe on Har Sinai. When he sheltered Moshe and passed by him, you say that God had talit and tefillin. Moshe didn't have to.
But is there a minyan amongst 13-year-olds and up?
If it's an egalitarian minyan.
We can't see if there's a congregation that's sitting and not, it's being counted in, but not part of the dancing.
I can't read the very bottom, but it looks like, I'm guessing that this is a progressive Israeli organization that has put this out. Whether it's a poster or a stamp or whatever. Just, recognizing the many countries that Jews have come from to Israel. The inclusiveness of gender and the disabled girl in the wheelchair and what I'm calling a woman rabbi, but remembering the history of with Herzl and Moses and Miriam, and different races.
It's definitely conservative because the little print at the bottom says Masorti Olami.
Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't read it. I'm glad your eyes are good enough.
Oh
I
yeah,
had to pull the
that
computer 6 inches from my nose, but I could read it.
makes a lot of sense then. Why there's the flags everywhere, since Mesorti Olami is also like it's like the international, like was one of the international conservative like groups, right? It's like kind of represents the movement from like everywhere, right?
Yep.
Okay, well that
So-
makes sense why there's the flags everywhere.
So why is a French flag shown twice?
French flag. Oh, on the top, I see.
One on the top,
No.
one on the bottom.
It's only there once. The French flag is immediately to the left of the Israeli flag. There's a red, white, and blue flag all the way to the left, but those are horizontal stripes.
What about the red flag? Well, I thought the French was horizontal. What's the flag all the way to the right, upper right corner, and fourth from the right and the bottom?
That Italian flag?
Upper right is the Netherlands, I think. Like the far upper right one by India. I think that one is the Netherlands.
Mhm.
It's
I can see
repeated down
Argentina.
the lower right.
I can see Argentina, Chile, Canada.
South Africa.
Hmm.
Those are all
Norway,
countries.
Sweden.
The diaspora.
Japan.
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah, but-
flag on the bottom right
Australia.
Uganda?
It is.
There's a conservative
Oh.
presence there also.
What was
That's really cool. I forgot their flag looked like that for a second. I wasn't sure what country it was. I knew it was in Africa. That's very interesting.
the country, Gabriel? I didn't hear what you said.
Uganda looks like on the bottom
okay.
right.
Mhm.
It's those black, yellow, and red stripes. I can't see what kind of animal that is at the center. Is it like it looks like maybe a bird at the center?
It might be a lion.
Oh, a lion? Okay, it's too small for me to tell. I can't see what animal it is, but I think it's some kind of animal.
So the men's club and the Canners Assembly and Masorti Olami have all been very active in trying to save the Ugandan Jews.
Mhm. And you notice Herzl, Moses, and Miriam are off and a different thing in there, in sort of like a white cloud or a mist that they're, he said in
Present in
spirit
spirit
or
only.
from on high. Yeah, that,
The only two bearded men, I think, are Moses and Theodor Herzl, who might have found the connection somewhat ironic. And especially the cloud surrounding both of them, as you say.
mhm.
Since he was just as, would just as soon have had all the Jews join the Catholic Church if they could do it. But I don't know that Moses would have taken that position.
It it is interesting the way it's like portrayed. It somewhat reminds me of you know how during Kedusha during the Amidah, it's like the sort of heavenly minion, we're like joining it. Kind of reminds me of that, like the way they're depicting it, even though this isn't that part of the service, just because of the way they're depicted as almost looking somewhat like spirits kind of here. Kind of reminded me of that because of that.
It's a great connection, Gabriel.
Along the same lines, is it not suggestive of what you call the guests, the guests, Uspezin, is that what they are on Sukkos? Maybe I don't understand. I don't know enough about that to say anything.
That's also true.
One of the things that puzzles me about this picture is that it is Simchat Torah, season of Simcha. Yeah, I don't see people smiling. Unless I just can't see, my eyes are so bad. But I'm looking at their facial expressions. I'm trying to see joy or smiling, but I don't see that.
Yeah, there are. The woman with the blue coat is smiling. The boy who's holding her hand is sort of smiling.
Okay, it's my vision.
The woman rabbi is smiling. This guy down here is smiling, and this woman, either she's smiling or she has a mustache, one or the other.
The lady in the wheelchair, I think, is wearing a talit.
Yes, she is.
Yes.
The one holding the other Torah.
I think the young boy who's holding the Torah is not of age.
Right.
So
I think Moses is smiling because he's wondering what's going on.
And that definitely looks like a female chayelet, a female Israeli soldier. That I recognize the uniform.
Well, and the boy in the center,
Where
the
are you
green
looking?
shirt,
Where is it?
has a
Oh, I see.
Charles, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the boy in the green shirt in the foreground appears to be an Israeli flag that he is lifting up there.
Oh, and the really little kid in the back looks like it's so pixelated, but it looks like the logo on the bottom. So it's like it also looks like there's a little Masorti Olami flag that the other child is holding. I can't tell if is that child like standing on the wheelchair or is he standing directly behind it? I can't tell.
Probably directly behind.
Behind it.
Oh, okay. For a second, I thought he might be standing on top of it. I couldn't tell.
No. Look how much shorter he is than the lady who's equally far back.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense.
The
And
man in the gray suit in the back with the mustache is also holding a small Torah, it looks like, in his left arm.
Or is it the boy next to him that's holding it?
I think there are two Torahs there.
Could be. Yeah.
By the way, notice that the one that the little boy is holding directly in front of the ark, that's a Sephardic case. See how it kind of looks like a big bullet with
Yep.
some
Oh,
bells on
Yes.
top?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way the Sephardic cases are. You stand the thing up and you have to kind of crouch in front of it and you read it vertically instead of horizontally.
So this is basically a celebration of diversity and history.
What the conservative movement's all about.
Yeah. So Simchat Torah flags go back to the 1600s, and they were invented to solve a problem of how do you include children in dancing with the Torahs when the Torahs are too heavy for the children to carry. And so they, in Poland, I believe, was the first ones, they came up with the idea of having flags for the kids to wave. And later on, some people put apples on tops of the, like, stuck on top of the flags, probably because someone got their eye poked and they wanted to avoid that. And apples are a nice fall fruit.
Yeah. When I was a kid, the sticks were pointed at the top, going above the flag, and we put an apple on those, and then we put a candle on top of the apple. And I guess they decided that was not a good idea because they couldn't have kids running around with a lit candle on them.
Don't light the candle. Don't light it.
But they did in those.
So the designs of the flags shifted over the years in reaction to what was going on around the community that was making the flags. So, for instance, after the 6-Day War, the IDF was, when the IDF saved Israel from destruction, that the IDF became a very popular design to go on Simchat Torah flags in the fall of 1967. So the National Library of Israel has a whole website where they have historical images tracing the evolution of Simchat Torah flags. And when I send out the source sheet, you can see the link for learning about the flag. But each flag is carefully designed to make a point of some sort, no pun intended. So Simchat Torah on one foot. Carol Koenig, could you read this, please?
I'm going to defer because I have a cat on my lap and I can't see the computer well. So I'd have to move him.
Is he wearing a hat?
All right, should I ask someone else?
I'll read.
Thank you, Alan.
Simchat Torah on one foot. Simchat Torah is a fall holiday. For conservative and Orthodox Jews in the diaspora, it is the 9th day of Sukkot. In Israel, and for Reform and Reconstructionist Jews in the diaspora, it is the 8th day of Sukkot and is combined with Shemini Atzeret. Although some Reconstructionists will do their dancing at the end of their Simchat Torah so as to be aligned with the rest of the Jewish community. Like Shavuot, Shemini Atzeret was originally a temple-based holiday, and so it evolved after the temple was destroyed.
Thank you. All right, so now we all know what we're talking about with Simchat Torah. It's a holiday. It's coming up this Saturday night and Sunday. In the Torah, as was read on the first 2 days of Sukkot, we learn about Sukkot that the first day is a sacred occasion. there are 7 days of sacrifices, and on the 8th day, the Shmini day, you shall observe a sacred occasion and bring an offering by fire to God. It is a solemn gathering. Atzeret, you shall not work at your occupations. So there's Shmini Atzeret, but there's not Simchat Torah. In Numbers, it gives a listing of the sacrifices for each holiday. These become the holiday maftir readings. And it says, Bayom Hashmini Atzeret Tiyarachem. So there we have Shmini and Atzeret right next to each other. On the 8th day, Shmini, a solemn gathering, Atzeret, you shall hold, you shall not work at your occupations. And then we get the recipe for the barbecue, for the sacrifice, which is basically sacred barbecue, for what you should eat on Shmini Atzeret. So we still don't have a 9th day, we still don't have Simchat Torah. In the Amidah that we say today, and in Birkat Hamazon, we have a paragraph, starts with Vatitan Lanu, and then there are different additions to put in for each holiday. So there's one for Passover, there's one for Shavuot, there's one for Sukkot. And then we have on Shmini Atzeret and on Simchat Torah, we have the same thing. Hashmini Chag Atzeret Hazeh Zman Simchatenu. The Zman Simchatenu, time of our happiness, is the same thing that we say in Sukkot. So that's a liturgical way of saying Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah are kind of part of like Sukkot. And because Simchat Torah does not have its own Torah identity in the Torah, it does not have its own identity in this part of the liturgy either. It is wrapped in with Shmini Atzeret. So that is how the liturgy nods to that aspect of Simchat Torah, going back to the Torah itself. There are 2 other pieces, one in the Torah, one in the rest of the Tanakh, that have some bearing on this matter. At the end of the Torah, Parshat Vayelech, Moses talks about something called Hakel, that every 7th year at the Feast of Booths, aka Sukkot, then the teaching is supposed to be read to all the Israelites that have gathered together. And the word for teaching is Torah. So this opens itself to a lot of interpretation as to what exactly are we reading. Are we reading Moses' last speech? Are we reading the entire Torah? Are we reading the book of Deuteronomy? But we're reading something, some Torah of some sort, to everybody. So that's one thing that goes. What?
Question, David.
Yeah.
Even in ancient times when they read the Torah and finished it, they had to restart it again. Was there any kind of a acknowledgement or ceremony when they went around to restart the Torah in Genesis, even though Simchat Torah was not a holiday per se?
They didn't restart it until the following week for a long time.
Okay.
So I don't know that there was any more acknowledgement than there was for finishing any other book of the Torah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. It's a good question.
I also have a question really quickly related to this text.
Yeah.
Does this establish like a special obligation to hear the Torah being read on Shmini Atzeret?
No, this is every 7th year.
Oh.
Sometime during Sukkot.
Oh, okay. I see.
So yeah, so let me just see if it's tied to Shemitah. Yeah, on the Shemitah year, on the sabbatical year, which I believe we just had one that finished at Rosh Hashanah. So this might establish some obligation to hear Torah on Sukkot of the Shemitah year, of the sabbatical year. But this is also tied to when all of the Jewish people go to Jerusalem for a pilgrimage. So if that's not happening, this may not be enforced at this point either.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. We do have something from the book of Nehemiah where the Israelites have been exiled to Babylonia, they have come back, and now Nehemiah is rededicating them to their Judaism. And as part of this, they celebrate Sukkot for the first time in a long time. And then Nehemiah reads from, quote, the teaching of God. Again, unclear exactly what that was, how much of the Torah as we know it today. From the first day of Sukkot to the last day of Sukkot, they celebrate the festival for 7 days, and there's a solemn gathering on the 8th day as prescribed. So again, we have a public reading of Torah during the time of Sukkot. They're observing Shmini Atzeret. We don't yet have Simchat Torah, but this gives us something to work with. All right. Other questions about Simchat Torah in the Torah before we move on?
Yeah, first of all, the thing from Nehemiah, I couldn't see on the screen, and I don't know it, is what chapter and verse that is, in case I'm keeping score about where it fits in. Oh, here, 8, is that it? Chapter 8, verses 13 to 18. Okay, then my question is there anything you're aware of in the Torah itself? I mean, let's just say in the Chumash, in the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, that suggests there are 5 books, and that when it refers to Torah in Deuteronomy, it means you should read that, because I've never seen that. Like at a Chabad service, they very definitely feel that the Torah, the entire Torah, was revealed at Sinai and so on. But I just want to understand if there's any reason to find that in the Torah, because if there isn't, then the fact that we didn't celebrate, or that the Israelites didn't celebrate the completion of the reading of the Torah, would make sense. That you couldn't have found it in the Torah to begin with.
Not to my knowledge. There are references where towards the end of Deuteronomy where it says, like, write this Torah on like stones that you have plastered when you cross the Jordan River.
70 languages.
But in that the rabbis interpret that to be 70 languages. I don't think the text says 70 languages. We're doing well enough just to find stones big enough to write it in any language.
I thought that when the Israelites were told to write the Torah on the mountain as they crossed the river, that it was only Deuteronomy that they were supposed to be writing, and that was called the teaching of God. I've heard that someplace.
Right. So yeah, so because it says HaTorah Hazeh, maybe HaTorah Hazot, it's unclear whether Torah means like Moses' speech, or which would be most of Deuteronomy really, or the entire book of Deuteronomy, or all 5 books, and that depends on your interpretive bent as to what you think. Like, when you see Torah, do you try to read it as maximally as possible every conceivable time, or do you work more within the constraints of context to some extent?
Thank you.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah.
What I consider quick. It's clear that this is the only place, or this is the only Raglayim period to which there's an Atzeret attached to it in text, in Torah. And to the extent that even in our liturgy and in our practices, we do not do Leishev Basuka on Shmini Atzeret. We're done with Sukkot at the end of the seventh day of Sukkot, at the end of Rosh Hashanah Rabbah, whatever is the last day. But Shmini Atzeret is definitely a standalone observance compared to Sukkot, because we don't have any of the relationships officially on that we do in the Sukkah.
Right. Shmini Atzeret is attached to Sukkot. It is its own
on a calendar, but not
It is its own quasi. It has a. If Shmini Atzeret was on Facebook, it would say its relationship status with Sukkot is it's complicated. It wants to be close, but not too close as far as its own identity. Shmini Atzeret could, potentially use some therapy to work through this. So yes, it is not Sukkot, but it is closely attached to Sukkot, to the point of sharing the same nickname, Zman Simchatenu. All right, I'm going to go on and pause a little bit later so we can get through the next 2,400 years.
Wow.
So, in the Mishnah, we see the closest thing to Simchat Torah is that there's a discussion about what we saw in the Torah of the reading of Torah on Sukkot, where it says that they make a platform for the king, and the king sits on it, and he reads to everybody. And that is it. The Mishnah does not know about Simchat Torah. And this discussion about community gathering on Sukkot for public reading from the Torah gives us a jumping off point, but it is not Simchat Torah. All right, in the Gemara, in the Talmud, we see in Masechet Megillah, Tractate Megillah, that it says on the last festival day of Sukkot, on Shmini Atzeret, here is the Torah reading, and here's the Haftorah. And on the next day, which, if that was the 8th day, this must now be the 9th day, the 2nd day of Shmini Atzeret, we read the end of the Torah, V'zot HaTorah, and then we read the Haftorah, Vayamod Shlomo, which is from 1 Kings, where just like Moses is blessing the Jewish people, here Solomon is blessing the Jewish people after, I believe, the temple was dedicated, which happened on Sukkot.
Sounds good.
So this is the first time that we're seeing Shmini Atzeret having a second day, at least outside of Israel. It's the first time that we're seeing Shmini Atzeret day 2 has a different Torah reading. This is the first time where we're seeing that on what will become Simchat Torah, we read the end of the Torah. Now, we also find out in the Talmud that while the people of Babylonia are reading the whole Torah every year, and therefore they can have Simchat Torah once a year, the people, quote, of the West, which from Babylonia, that means the land of Israel, they do a triennial cycle. So the modern triennial cycle is we read the first third of every parsha 1 year. And so we start at Bereshit at the beginning, we get to the end of the Torah, and we do Simchat Torah. And then the next year, we read the middle third of every parsha, and we do Simchat Torah. And then the next year, we do the last third of every parsha, and we do Simchat Torah. The original triennial cycle, which is older than the full Kriya system, was 3 weeks it takes us in a row to get through all of Bereshit, all the first parsha. And for the next 3 weeks, we're going to read the next parsha. And for the next 3 weeks, we're going to read the next parsha. So they get Simchat Torah once every 3 years under that system. All right. In the Midrash, the closest thing we get is from Shir HaShirim Rabbah, which is talking about Song of Songs, where it says that Solomon went to Jerusalem and made a banquet for all of his servants, and Rabbi Elazar interprets this to mean that you make a feast for completing the Torah, because Solomon did that after he was granted wisdom in a dream. This text will come back in the Beit Yosef, which is a later law code, to say that this is a Simchat Torah text, and it's about celebrating the completion of the Torah. The Midrash itself doesn't know from Simchat Torah, but it does become used as a tool to justify Simchat Torah later on. All right. Now we're getting to the 900s, and now Simchat Torah will actually start showing up by name. So the Gaonim were the leaders of the Jewish community in Babylonia, modern-day Iraq, from around 800 to 1000. And one of their responsa, one of their answers to a question, says that on the second day of the holiday of Shmini Atzeret, which is the last day, we don't have a name for this holiday, but the second day of it, even some of the elders dance when praises are said to the Torah. So, like, even though we don't really dance on holidays because that might in some way be disrespectful to the holiday, on Simchat Torah we can dance because it gives honor to the Torah. So already from, we'll call it 800, we have dancing on Simchat Torah. In the Machzor Vitri, which is a prayer book and also law code written by a student of Rashi, we get the name Simchat Torah for the first time. And it says that because in the Torah it talks about being happy on Sukkot and on Shmini Atzeret, therefore we have happiness with the Torah because we have completed reading the Torah on this holiday. And so we get to the end of the Torah and we are happy. And then the Haftorah is the one about dedicating the temple. There was a book written around 1030 CE that tried to list for people who are interested what are all the differences between the people living in the land of Israel and the people living in Babylonia. And one of the differences was that in Babylonia they have Simchat Torah every year at the end of Sukkot, and in the land of Israel they have Simchat Torah about every 3-ish years. And apparently not everybody's on the same page as to exactly when they read the same Torah portion then at that point. But in Babylonia, they're more unified on these matters. Benjamin of Tudela, very cool figure. He was Marco Polo 100 years before there was Marco Polo. So he's a Jewish guy that leaves Europe and goes and travels throughout Europe and throughout Africa and throughout Asia, at least Western Asia. And then he writes a book, hugely popular, in 1170, called The Travels of Benjamin Tudela, or his itineraries. And one of the things he says in Cairo is that there's a synagogue of Jews from Babylonia and a synagogue of Jews from the land of Israel, and they don't agree on when they read the Torah and how they read the Torah, but they do manage to get together every Simchat Torah and Shavuot in order to rejoice with the Torah, because Torah brings the Jews together, even though they disagree with each other about lots of other things related to the Torah. So that's from 1170. We have Sefer HaManhig from Spain in the 1100s, which talks about, again, Simchat Torah. We get the name, we get what we read on it, the Torah reading. we get the Haftorah, and that the Haftorah is connected because of the blessings. That comes from that. Maimonides weighs in. Maimonides weighs in on a lot of things. Here he is in his Mishnah Torah, so late 1100s, and he says he comes from Spain. He's in Cairo. He says that most Jews read the Torah within 1 year. There are some who read it every 3 years, but this is not the prevalent custom. Don't do that. And then he talks about Torah readings as well. All right, the Zohar says that because God makes a celebration when we finish the Torah, and we make a celebration when we finish the Torah, therefore everybody is happy on Simchat Torah, and that is why we have a celebration, because God is happy and we are happy. That's the Zohar's take on it. That's from the 1300s in Spain, even though it's attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai from the 100s in Israel. All right, then we get the Torah. So the Torah is from the 1300s, written by Rabbi Jacob ben Asher, and this is a law code. So the big chiddush, the big innovation here, is that this is where we get the first evidence of starting Bereshit, starting the beginning of the Torah right after we finish it. And this is said to be the case because we don't want Satan to say to God, look, they just finished the Torah and they're done with it. They don't have anything else to do with it for a while now. And so we don't want to give Satan any excuses to defame us, and therefore we just started over again so Satan doesn't have an excuse to have a chance to say anything about it. All right, that's the Torah. And again, we see this in the 1400s in Sefer Minhagim, which is a book of customs written because after the Black Death, there were so few scholars left in the German Jewish communities that there was a concern that people wouldn't know how to be Jewish properly. So Rabbi Isaac Turner wrote this book so that people could consult the book in case they didn't have people to consult. All right. So King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, who kicked out the Jews, had a Jewish advisor, Rabbi Don Isaac Abarnabel, and Rabbanel rather, and when he went into exile with the Jews in 1492, he went to Spain. He wrote a commentary on the Torah, and in the commentary on the part about the king reading from the Torah on Sukkot, he says that every year they would read part of the Torah, and so on a 7-year cycle they would finish the Torah, and then that is why it's called Simchat Torah, because we finish the Torah and it connects to this thing that we read about in the Torah itself. In the Shulchan Aruch, which is 1563, Rabbi Joseph Karo, we get a number of pieces that we would recognize between what Rabbi Karo writes for the Sephardim, what Rabbi Isserlis writes for the Ashkenazim. So we have that the Kiddush for Simchat Torah evening does include Shechianu. We have 3 Torah scrolls and what we read from each of them. We have the Haftorah is from Joshua. That's a change from what we've been saying earlier. We have Hakafot. We have doing the circling with the Torah. This is the first time where we're seeing it. We have that you can have lots of readers from the Torah and that you can repeat things multiple times, which was apparently very controversial at the time. We have the idea of a children's aliyah coming up. So a lot of different things, and also what to do if you don't have 3 Torahs, how to handle that. All right, now I'm going to gloss over this, but there was an evolution from what the Haftorah ought to be In the Talmud, it says we read the one about Solomon blessing the people. By the Shulchan Aruch, we're reading about Joshua, which is what we do today. And so this was very controversial and went back and forth. And Rav Amram Gaon wrote into, he made the change. He was the one that had the first Siddur in 868. Other Gaonim weighed in on it. So that was a change that happened. And then, moving forwards, we see that Isaac Luria, who was a big Kabbalist, he, in the late 1500s, he found it very important to do the Hakafot. This was a big deal to him, and if he missed it at one synagogue, he'd go to another synagogue until he could do all 7 Hakafot. We see something about Hakafot from the British Administrator of the Royal Navy and a member of Parliament, Samuel Pepys. He keeps a diary from the 1660s. This is of great interest to people who study the Restoration and also to people who study Simchat Torah, because one entry is about his visit to a synagogue on Simchat Torah. And so we see that the Torah is being carried around by lots of people and that it's very popular. It is an honor to carry the Torah, and that this is a joyous holiday. And he's very confused by it.
I heard his name was pronounced Peeps by one of my teachers.
Peeps?
That's what I heard from one of my teachers from school days. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. We get some flags from the 1600s in Poland. In the Soviet Union, particularly after the Six-Day War, Simchat Torah was one of the only times when Jews felt comfortable gathering publicly as Jews. And even though, and this was reported in the Soviet newspapers, but they tried to say this is only a folk custom. There's no praying happening here. Don't worry, folks. The Jews are not being religious. And next week, they're looking forward to celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. So this was a big thing that was very noticed, and a lot of Soviet Jews participated in this. And in modern Israel, they do both Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah on the same day. We have here a video of Simchat Torah dancing, or of the music for it, from the Maxwell Street Klezmer Band, which is a Chicago-based band. Then we have some appendices. Appendix A is from the Conservative Yeshiva. It gives the history of Simchat Torah in more detail than I did. So if this is of interest to you, then you should look through that. We have more sources about dancing in Simchat Torah, where it comes from, why is this a problem, how is it that you can do it, lots of discussion about that. We have the Simchat Torah stamps that were issued in 2014 in Israel. They have 3 different Simchat Torah flags, and then finally we end the way that we began with the Masorti Simchat Torah flag and their description of all the pieces that went into it, in cases of interest to you. So, could you stop the share? That was a